Hello, leaders. How are you doing today? I'm so excited to be part of this program. I love leadership. We're all leaders. We all have roles as leaders, no matter who we are, where we are in our life, whether we're on the young end or the old end of life. You can see I'm a little bit closer to 100 than I am to zero, but we always have an opportunity to be leaders. And to be part of this effort is really exciting for me. I spent a lot of time working with students. I've been a coach, a teacher, an athletic director, a president of a school. I worked with K through college students on and off the basketball court, in and out of the classroom. So I'm really excited to be here and really excited to have this opportunity to chat with you a little bit today and put you through an exercise or two actually to help you think a little bit more through your leadership. And one of my favorite expressions or one of my favorite topics is called put your oxygen mask on first. And you're probably wondering, well, where did he get that from? Well, if you've flown, you're familiar with the concept of put your oxygen mask on first. That's what the flight attendants will tell you when they get in the plane during the pandemic. And this particular time, actually, it's even more interesting because now we have to take off our mask to put on our mask. But the whole concept behind put your oxygen mask on first is that you have to make sure that you have oxygen before you can help others. If you don't put your mask on first and you try to help others, you could actually fail and you could cause more crisis actually in an emergency. So it's so important for us to, in an airline or airplane emergency or in our life, to put our oxygen mask on first. Put your oxygen mask on first, then you can help others. And that's really what I want to talk to you about today, or at least start talking with you about today. It's going to be impossible in the time I have to get through the entire program, but I want to give you a core, that word is important, a core element of that. And really the way, the process to go through this, to get your oxygen mask on, it's a 5-step roadmap for a mindset shift. It's a 5-step roadmap for a mindset shift. And some of you may be asking, what the heck is a mindset? Well, a mindset is really who we are. What are our attitudes? What's our motivation? Why do we do things? What keeps us moving? What excites us? What brings us joy? What inspires us? What helps us when we get into trouble? What do we lean on when we run into those challenges in our lives? And sometimes you may or may not know the reasons or have thought those through, but there are some elements, and that's what these 5 steps are all about. What I want to do first is kind of talk about these 5 steps, give you a framework, and then we're going to go back to the first step of core values and work through an exercise related to that. So the first step, obviously, of the 5-step process is your core values. Your core values are really what are foundational to who you are. They're your inner, your core, as it says, your values, what you believe in firmly, what you believe in strongly. They're what make you who you are. They are, when you make decisions, you oftentimes lean on your core values. Sometimes you don't realize that. Sometimes you're very thoughtful about it. And again, we're going to go through an exercise in a little bit to actually identify your core values. So you're more aware. You have that self-awareness about what your core values are and what's important to you so that you can rely on them more and more often. And sometimes, more importantly, without even thinking about it. They just become part of who you are and what you are. So that's the first step of the 5-step roadmap. The second step is what I call your balance disc, your balance disc. Now, those of you that maybe go to the gym or exercise or in your weight room, whatever the case might be, there's a round piece of plywood or a round board. It's only about that thick, and on the bottom is a half a ball. Sometimes it's a rubber ball. Sometimes people put a softball underneath there if you want to make your own. But it's a very wobbly thing. And when I think of life and balance and work, it's not as easy as this teeter-totter that sometimes people talk about, this life-work balance. I wish it was that simple, right? Trying to balance these two things. But really what the balance disc about is there are so many factors in your life that you have to balance. That you have to balance. You have to balance exercise and nutrition. You have to balance friendships. You have to balance family. If you work, you have to balance your work inside of that. You have to balance fun, play, and creativity. So there are 9 different elements that you have to balance on this balanced disc. And what they use it for in the weight room is when you stand on it, or a fitness center, it really helps your ankles and your lower body, helps adjust and strengthen those, particularly if you had some kind of an ankle injury. I'm probably making you a little nauseous with this going on, like you're going to get seasick, but that's how the balance disc works. So the process we go through is it's a 9-step process where you rate where you are on each of these 9 different elements, and then figure out where are your strengths, where are your weaknesses, who or what can you do or rely on to help you grow in your strengths and to some degree in your weaknesses. And then how can we stretch that process out over a number of weeks or months so you can really focus and work on those things and develop your skills. For example, exercise and nutrition is a simple one. If you need to watch your exercise and nutrition, we all do, but we have to adjust that. And I've been trying to get into a regular exercise routine. Hopefully you do some kind of exercise on a regular basis, whether it's just walking on a treadmill, going out for a brisk walk in the neighborhood, a bicycle ride. Some of you probably are in sports, athletics, dance, cheerleading. Maybe even an instrument helps you with your lung and your wind ability, a lot of different ways. And then making sure you're eating the right foods and the right amount of those foods. So you kind of assess all this as one of those 9 pieces of that pie on that balance disc as you look around that circle. And at the center of the balance disc, again, is your core values. What are those things that are most important to you? So we talk about our core values, we talk about the balance disc. The third step in the 5-step roadmap is your inner circle. These are the people that are closest to you, that are really making a difference in the decisions you make in your life. It could very well at this stage in your life be your family, might not be. Could be a coach, could be a musical director, a drama director, could be people that you work with if you're working right now, could be other family members, could be people you've met through maybe some different camps or experiences you've had with school groups or even outside of school groups. But it's those 5 people that mean probably the most to you in your life. And again, in some cases it might not be your family. Who is influencing you the most? I had an experience when I was working, and I was fortunate enough to be promoted to a vice president position where I was working, and I had to hire my replacement. And I brought to the president, my boss, the list of candidates, and basically had it down to 2 different people. And she asked me a number of questions about the people. I talked a little bit about who they were, their strengths and weaknesses. One of the gentlemen was very much like me. He was Caucasian, he was tall, very interested in sports. I mean, hair color was inside and outside. We were very similar. I was very comfortable with him. Another one of the candidates was a Hispanic woman, Dora Zuniga, and Dora was very strong and bold and forceful in a good way, but very very challenging to me in my perspective. And I was leaning towards Art. Art was the other gentleman who was involved. And she challenged me in a good way about my decision and what I was thinking. And we went back and forth and talked some more, and finally came down to the decision of hiring Dora because she could fill in where my weaknesses were. She brought skills to our organization where I had weaknesses. So as I, at that time, didn't know about my balance disc, but as I looked at my balance disc, my weaknesses were things that she could fill in on, and together we made a stronger team. Also did that with other team members. So we had an incredible team, an incredible run in that particular organization because I looked at my inner circle. Who were the people that were going to influence me at work? And how could they help me? How could they help us achieve more as an organization? How could I achieve more as an individual and grow and learn? And actually, just about 2 years ago, I got back with Dora when I was down speaking in Tampa, Florida, and we had a great 3-hour lunch. We didn't eat the whole time, but had a great lunch and reminisced about what we both learned from those experiences, because she knew that there was some uncomfortableness there, and we grew into being comfortable, and just a great experience. And now I'm actually gone on. I'm a certified diversity, equity, and inclusion instructor. Proud of that fact, and I work with individuals and companies in that particular topic. So she really had a lot to do with it. And I've had many other experiences, which I won't be able to share with you today just because of the time we'll have together. So again, back to the 5 steps. We start with our core values. What are those foundational things that we work on, and we're working from the inside out? The balance disc, what are those 9 elements that I need to work on? Where are my strengths and weaknesses? and then who's in my inner circle to help me with those particular weaknesses. The fourth element of the 5-step roadmap is your comfort zone. And that's a tough thing, right? Because it's always great to be in our comfort zone. But we have to work and fight through fear, expand and grow our comfort zone, and get into learning and get into growth. And that's why you're in this call. That's why you're leaders, and that's why you'll be even better leaders, because you're going to fight through those fears. We all fail. Matter of fact, this morning I had a great conversation with an individual. All we talked about for an hour was fail and fear and rejection and how we get through that. And really it comes back down to our core values. What are our strengths? Who do we rely on? So one thing that happened to me to stretch to my comfort zone is I'm not a very technological person, right? Social media was a little scary and still is a little scary to me. Well, I was taking a course on how to speak from AJ. AJ's a great guy, still a mentor of mine. And AJ challenged us all to do one of two things. We either had to do a 5-minute stand-up comedy skit at a comedy club, or we had to go on Facebook Live and do a 5-minute comedy skit. Well, where I live in the middle of Wisconsin, we don't have a whole lot of comedy clubs. So I was going to have to go on Facebook Live. Well, I barely knew Facebook, and I had never been on Facebook Live before. And again, I'm not technologically advanced, so I went at the place I worked at, I went into our big conference room, pulled a table out, put a chair on top of the table, put my laptop on top of the chair. Then I had a corded earplugs with the little microphone, and used that for my speaker. Behind me, there was a TV, so I had my website up there, which is my first name and my last name.com. How creative is that, right? ToddKukan.com. By the way, you can go there if you want. But anyway, so I start recording it, and I tell the story about taking my mother shopping. And my mother she's 92 and elderly. She's living by herself with my father in independent living. And but it's just kind of comical, because I remember when I was a kid and she'd take me shopping, now it was my turn to take her shopping. And we had some great stories about that. So I was sharing the stories, and as you can tell, I tend to use my arms a lot. Well, I bumped the cord, turned the laptop, so I thought, okay, I'll turn it back and I'll keep going. Well, then I noticed in the lower left-hand corner down here, there were some people typing in messages, which I didn't know that was part of Facebook Live. How stupid was I? And they were saying, Todd, we can't hear you, we can't hear you. So I'm like, I didn't know what to do, right? So I just kept on going, right? And then what I did was I went back into that post, and in the comment section, I kind of put in the punchline of the story. But, it got me out of my comfort zone. And now I do Facebook Live on a regular basis to help me build my business in leadership development and corporate communication and those sorts of things. So kind of a funny story to talk about the comfort zone. But there are many other things that, you've done things already in your life that have pushed you out of your comfort zone. You learn to walk, or you learn to do a certain skill, right? And you failed at it to start with, but you kept working on it, and you fought through that fear, and then you started learning and really started growing. And you're going to have so many more opportunities to do that down the road as well. So back to the 5 steps, the first step being your core values, then the balance disc, inner circle, comfort zone. The last step as we move from the inside out is DISC, D-I-S-C, capital letters. DISC is an assessment that you take. It's about a 15-minute assessment. It gives you a 30-page report on details on how to be a better communicator, how you are motivated. Most importantly, how to work with other personality styles. So I'm an I personality style. I'm very, I'm people oriented. I'm very, you can see I'm, very outgoing, those sorts of things. Those are what an I is. But not everybody's like that. So I have to learn what other people's styles are so I can meet them where they're at, right? So a D style is very direct, driven, dominant. So I have to be careful with how I interact with people who are D styles to get the best out of our relationship. It's not taking advantage. It's not changing who I am, but it's understanding what their style is and how you work with them. So that's a whole other concept that we won't have time to get through, but working from the inside out. All right, so let's go back to the core values. I want to take you through an exercise. You should have received a one-page list of about 100 words on it. I don't want you to look at the list yet. If you've printed it out, turn it over. If not, grab a paper and pen, because I want to ask you a couple questions. And we're going to run through this. This typically takes an hour or so to do all this. So I'm going to run through all the instructions, and then if you want to, you can take some time on the side if you really want to get this. Or if you want to bring me in for some sort of a conversation or get me on a Zoom call, I can help you, or if it's a student group or some way to help you. I'm more than happy to talk about that, do some strategic thinking about it. So the first thing I want you to do, I want you to think about what's something in your life that has brought you joy or fulfillment. I want you to jot some things down. Think of something in your life that was like one of those moments that was just like everything was aligned, the stars, everything. It was a great moment, a great day, a great morning, a great session, whatever the case might be. And think about and write a little bit about what that was like. What were some of the thoughts that went through your mind? What were some of the important? Why was that so important? Why did that bring you such great joy and fulfillment? So maybe jot that question down in case you can't get to answering it entirely. Then the second question of these 5 is, what is something that was a challenge for you, right? We have our moments of joy and fulfillment. Talk about a challenging time and how did that make you feel? What were some of the circumstances around that? What were some of the words maybe that pop in your mind, or this particular challenge that came up in your life? I can think of 3 of them that happened to me in the last year that in normal circumstances would have devastated me, but because I had strong core values, I was able to fight through them and get through them. All right, so that's the second question about a challenge. The third question is, when are you, or what are you doing when you're most inspired? What are you doing, or where are you when you're most inspired? What inspires you to make you do better, do more, whatever the case might be? What's inspirational to you? So again, think about, maybe it's connected to the first one, what brings you joy and fulfillment. But when you're an inspired person, when I'm an inspired Todd, what does that mean? And for me, I love doing these kinds of things, talking and sharing and adding value to others. I prefer doing it live, but this is great. With technology now, we can get out and reach so many more people. All right, so that's the third question. The fourth question is kind of the opposite of that. When do you feel most disempowered? When do you feel like you don't have control maybe over a situation, or things aren't going as well? What were the emotions that you were thinking about in that particular case, where things weren't going along the way that you had maybe hoped that they would go? All right, so we got one more, but let me go back. So first one is, what brings you joy and fulfillment? Write down, what are some of your thoughts? The moment in life maybe where you had the most joy and the most fulfillment. Think about that. The second one being a challenging time. And I can think of a time when I was doing some training and the rug was pulled out from underneath me, and I had to regroup with the company and with the folks I was working with and partnering with. What's a time when you are most inspired? Again, for me, it's when I get to speak in front of people like this. And when did you feel most disempowered or out of control? Not out of control like crazy, but out of control where you didn't feel part of that particular situation. And then the fifth question of these 5 to get us warmed up to look at our words is, where do you want to be 10, 20 years from now? Maybe even think way down the road when you're 80 years old. What do you want your legacy to be? So when people think of you in 20 years or 50 years, whatever number works for you, what do you want your legacy to be? How do you want to be remembered? So I have 4 children, 4 daughters. They're all 21 to 31, and they're a very important part of my life, as is my wife, of course. But I want to leave a legacy for my children. I want to be a role model for them. Now, I don't want you to write down, because you probably don't have children, but how do you want to, in 20 years, how do you want to be remembered, right? How do you want to be remembered? Not that you're not going to be here, but how do you want to be remembered? What are the things you want to do that you want to leave behind as your legacy? So when someone thinks of Todd Kukan, what do they think of? What type of person do they think of? What sort of things do I do? So now you've thought through those 5 questions, and hopefully you're thinking about, what are some things that are important to me? What are core to me from the inside out? Now I want you to flip that sheet over or pull it up on your computer and look at those 100 words, and very quickly go through and find 20 that best fit who you are. Now, some words you might not know the definition for. Don't worry about it, right? And cross out or whatever those words that don't mean anything to you, don't resonate, and get down to 20. And you don't want to spend a lot of time on each word. Kind of a gut reaction sort of thing, because it takes some time to get down to these 20. But I want you to get down to 20 words. Circle them or highlight them, or however you want to mark or indicate that these are your 20. You can mark up the sheet however you want on your laptop or your tablet or your phone, or if you've printed them out, whatever the case might be. Get to those 20 words. I want to give you a little bit of time to do that and to think about that. And I guess I should also add that if there are words that you think of in terms of your core values, things that are foundational to you, you can also add those words. So don't be restricted by the 100 words. It's a lot of words, but don't feel like you're restricted to those either. If a word comes up like this word I always think about a lot, feel free to use that word as well as you're thinking about this. So I'll give you some time here. I don't have background music, so I'm just going to be a little quiet for a while so you can kind of plow through these. Again, get through it as quick as you can. It's interesting when I'm in live groups and we talk about this, how challenging it is to get down to these 20 sometimes. And again, if you hit 19 or hit 21, that's fine. You can be, one or two on either side of it. But try to get to about 20 words on your list. You might even consider hitting the pause button at this point, because we're going to go to the next step. So if you can pause, you might want to do that. If not, then just continue with the exercise, and you can kind of finish it up when we're through here. The next thing I want you to do then is, from those 20 words that you've identified, or 19 or 21, now I want you to narrow it down to 5. And that's really tough to do, and it should be tough to do, because these 4, 5, 6 words are really your core values. Those things that are foundational to who you are. And those things that you can lean on or rely on or think about when you have to make a decision. Sometimes you might not think about them. Other times you will. But narrow it down to those final 5 words. I'll share mine in a minute. I don't want to direct you one way or another right now as you're working through this exercise. One thing I will tell you, though, is that I did this exercise again a year or two later, and thinking that I would come up with some different words, and I didn't. It was the same 5 words, basically, that really meant a lot to me. So your core values often don't change either. Now, unless there's some major, significant, life-changing thing that happens, perhaps. But typically, these are your core values. Who you are. You've had them for a while and didn't really realize them or haven't brought them out. So get down to those 5. And then the next step is the final step in the exercise is take each of those 5 words, or 4 or 6, whatever, and define them in a sentence. Okay, so define it in a sentence. To me, the word optimism means, and explain what that means. What I would typically do if we were in a live group is I would ask different people to share their 5 words, and ask different people to talk about their word and what it means to them, or define it. Because what optimism might mean for you might be something different. What adventuresome might mean for one person might be different for somebody else. What faith might mean for one person could be different for somebody else. So define each of those 5 words in a sentence that helps you and helps someone else understand why those core values and what those core values are and why they're important to you. Okay, so we started with those 5 questions to help you get your mindset right in thinking about your core values. We went from 100 to 20 to 5, and then you should have defined all 5 of those in a sentence. Then that exercise would be done. If we were continuing with this, we would then go into your balance disc, talk about your inner circle, comfort zone, and disc. So there's this 5-step roadmap for mindset shift. There's several steps to this to kind of help you get your thinking right, so to speak. So hopefully if you've completed the exercise, or when you do complete it, you'll find it valuable. Then put those 5 words somewhere where you can find them. Now, I've memorized mine. Mine are optimism, trust, honesty, enthusiasm, and teamwork. And those are so critical to me. If you got to know me better, you would know that that's who I am and the type of person I am. And those are really core values to me. And they helped me when I had those fails. I leaned on those to help me really get to what was important to me, what was foundational to me, who I am, who my values are, what's my core. That's what that's all about. So again, we went from core values to the balanced disc, to the inner circle, to the comfort zone, to disc. Spent a lot of time on your core values. I want to leave you with one last thing. And I always like to leave somebody with a call to action. Obviously, one of your calls to action is go to my website, toddkukan.com, reach out to me. We'll do a complimentary strategic session and figure out how we can make this happen for you better. Just have a conversation about anything. I don't care. I love talking to people, right? But reach out to me. I'm on social media, on Facebook, LinkedIn. I'm probably on, I think I'm on Instagram and Twitter, whatever. But feel free to connect with me, and let's take this journey one step further. But my last call to action is commit intentional acts of kindness, not random acts of kindness. Commit intentional acts of kindness. If each person on this call did that today and challenged somebody else to do it tomorrow, and you and that person challenged those people, and we kept building and multiplying, in the course of a month, if you did the math, we would impact hundreds of millions of people. Now, wouldn't that be something? By committing intentional acts of kindness, right? Make a determined effort to do that. Matter of fact, raise your right hand. State after me. State your name. I know, some of you said state your name. I, Todd Kukan, do solemnly swear to commit one intentional act of kindness every day. Wouldn't that be awesome? I mean, the world would be in such a better place. So thank you so much for listening and wading through this and answering all the questions and doing these exercises. I think it's so critical and so important to us if we want to put our oxygen mask on first, right? If we want to put our oxygen mask on first, we have to start with those core values, those things that are the most important to us to continue to move forward and really be the leaders that we need to be. Thanks so much. Have a great day.